That had been proven. But it was possible through the formation, and that was why they would never possess it. Not if Garrus had his way. The goal of biologic immortality had been an obsession of the Aris for thousands of years. Although every attempt failed, with the mutated results exiled to Voskin Or, what the Aris inadvertently created was an offshoot species, one that eventually began mating among themselves and developed a society independent of the Aris. By this time, the Aris had foregone most reproduction, satisfied with what they had become and determined to keep it that way. They feared evolution, believing it would change who they were, what they had become. The fear was justified. Over the millions of years of their civilization, the Aris of old bore no resemblance to the Aris of today. The ancients were looked upon as less than Aris, more animal, and certainly not the galaxy's dominant life form. And therein lay the paradox. Nunki and the other privileged could not accept that the Aris of the future would look back on them in the same light. In their opinion, the privileged were perfect. The goal then became to remain that way, forever. Only immortality would make that happen. Once a creature became immortal, evolution was no longer necessary. The organism would remain in its perfect state forever, or until it evolved into something different. And that produced another quandary. The Aris needed not only to create an immortal Aris, but also find a way to retard evolution. At first, they sought to alter the genetics of existing Aris, using the technicians for their experiments. The Lus, which in the Aris language means results, were less than satisfactory. At first, the exiles to Voskin Or were horribly deformed creatures that did not survive long. Others were mindless oafs who suffered the same fate. But then a more stable form of Lus was created, and soon the population began to grow, even as the Aris stagnated. Over 1,000 years, the Lus developed both technology and a desire for exploration, another quality currently lacking in the Aris. After 1,000,000 years of civilization, the Aris had been everywhere and done everything, but not the Lus. They traveled the galaxy, marveling in the wanderlust and discovering things that were new to them. It was during this age of discovery that the Lus found the formation. The Lus discovered the strange organic wafers several hundred years before they knew what they were. When additional artifacts were found, the Lus began to realize what they had. They programmed the stack according to the initial instructions, and the Masters emerged. From then on, the Masters controlled all experiments with the formation, while guiding the development of the Lus. When finally revealed to the Aris, the Masters were welcomed into their culture, something they had not done for any of the Lus before them. But this was just a ruse, to learn their secrets of immortality, and not to make them true members of society. At first, the efforts were subtle, before turning more overt. When everything else failed, the Aris held the Masters prisoners, and did unspeakable experiments on them, as if Garrus and the others were consciously keeping the power of immortality from the privileged. After their escape, the Masters returned to Voskin Or, secured the elements of the formation, and then led a defense of the Lus, which the Aris viewed as a rebellion. At first, the Aris did not fare well in the conflict. They had not fought a war in over 200,000 years, and with their diminished numbers the Lus prevailed in the early battles. But then the overall genius of the Aris began to manifest. Although the Lus were intelligent and accomplished, and much more physically savage, only the Masters were of equal or greater intellect as the Aris. Technology soon became the determining factor in the war, not the strength of numbers or even the will of the participants. Eventually the Aris gained the upper hand. And then it came down.